So, years ago, there was a fella who lived near me. His name was Johnny Pender, right? And Johnny, he was a really nice fella, but he was a little bit of a kind of cruel side to him. And he'd be always kind of playing tricks, but it was always now, not the way people play tricks and then you'd kind of play a trick and you'd kind of know when to stop, that kind of way. Mm-hmm. He was a bit of a kind of a jackass, and he'd be showing off to his friends. And he was at that age, he was about 18, 19, and he was still pretending he was 14, still acting the idiot. And he was always playing tricks and acting the idiot. But one thing was he was at home and he was just after finishing school and he was going on now. He was going on to be working on the building sites. He was a tradesperson. He was a really good carpenter. His whole family were carpenters. And one thing that he used to do to show his friends off, friends would be coming around, not the lads would be coming around on a Thursday or Friday night, maybe on a Saturday night, and he'd be always playing tricks. But one thing what he used to do was the neighbours just have cats. There was no woman called Mrs. Lynch, and there was another woman called Mrs. Johnson. They used to have cats and Redmond as well. And the cats, none of the cats would go into the house, people's houses, would pile the house all together, and the cats would go into one yard, and the next yard. And your man, he didn't like the cats in his yard. Now, the cats were doing no harm because, to be honest with you, if you have a cat in the yard, it's a good sign because there's no mice or rats. And he never didn't realise that, He always thought, the cats are in the yard now, whatever, they're walking around with flowers in the garden, didn't like him. And one thing he did was, he used to, when his friends would be around, right, he'd get the cats. And sometimes he'd get his Stanley blade or his scissors, and he'd go, chip, he'd cut off their whiskers. And he'd go, no, you won't find. If someone told him they can't find their way when they've got their whiskers cut off, then he'd say, cut the whiskers off, and say, no, go find your way home. And he'd do this with his friends, and the lads would be all, it's hilarious, it's quite funny, it's hilarious, right? It was quite stupid, really, to be honest with you, wasn't it? And the poor old cat would not, it wasn't that the cat wouldn't find his way home, my man had it wrong. So the cat wouldn't be able to judge when it'd go down into maybe if looking out for rabbits, or wouldn't be able to. Apparently, the whiskers were able to tell them the width of their own body, and they're able to tell them, they're able to judge a lot of things by it. So the whiskers are important. They're like little antennae, little things to be able to send signals back to the cat's brain to tell them stuff. But your man would cut them off, right? At one stage, he actually burnt them off, which was a real bad thing to do. Yeah. And there was that smell of it burning the cat hair, and the poor old cat was in bits, they all curled up. But people knew that he did them, but it's hard to control a cat, right? And the neighbours would say to him, that's bad what you did to me, cat. Poor old Tom there now is. And they'd keep the poor old cat in until the cat or the whiskers get better, just in case he get lost. And it wasn't very nice. But the old cats got together anyway, and the cats decided that they were going to get their back on your man. And there was one big red cat, a big fella called Tom the cat. And there was Tom, and there was a couple of other small black and white cats, boy cats, and they said they were going to get their back on your man. So your man would go off to work maybe around 7:30, and he'd go off and he'd come back around 6:30 of the evening, right? And the house would be empty, right? So the cats knew where his workshop was. So the cats used to go in, right? And one cat, Big Tom, said to the other fella, he says, I have an idea. He's a carpenter, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And what does he have to do? Well, cut wood, he says, and fit bits of wood in. Yeah, but before he cuts the wood, what does he have to do? What do you mean, they'd say? What does he have to do before he cuts the wood? Measure twice and cut once, he says. Oh, he has to measure the wood, he says. Measure the wood. What's he used to measure the wood, lads? Measuring tapes. So the cats, anyway, got his measuring tapes out. And when measuring tapes are 1 centimetre, 2 centimetre, 3 up to 10, up to whatever long to be, 5 metres, 10 metres. The cat's got one of those sharp scissors that cuts metal. Put a little cut in it. Say between 10 and 13. To cut away 3 centimetres. And gently just soldered it back. Now these were magic cats, lads. These had got spells, were able to do stuff like people could do. So Big Tom kept an eye on the door, and all the other cats worked away like little Santa's elves, and they glued it back, and it rolled in and out of tape. Next tape, please. One of them old-fashioned big round tapes, one with the leather on them. There's a lovely big kind of long tapes with kind of a brass end on them like a triangle. Pulled it out. Oh God, we'll take how many centimetres will we take off this one? 10? 10, okay. Bump, bump. Stitched back together. And they went through all his tapes. Is this making sense to you now what he did, lads?
Yeah.
So, they went through all his tapes. And the next evening he came home. What did your man do? Opened the van door, got out, and the van was full of rubbish and stuff in it. It was McDonald's wrappers and half-eaten breakfast rolls and cans of Fanta and all tools thrown. He wasn't a very tidy fella now, I'll be honest with you, right? And then the boys went through the back of the van, and the quiet went in, snuck in, and quietly went in, as quiet as a mouse. And any measuring tape that they found, chop, 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 here, there, 3 centimetres there, 30 centimetres there. So it left him off anyway and said, watch what happens. So the next day, your man goes into work, and he was only a trainee apprentice carpenter now, so he was working under a big fella, right? The fella was in charge. So, okay, I want 3 14 lengths there, please. 14 by 5. None of the builders be talking. 14 lengths there, I want 14 lengths of that. What do you want? Oh, I want him at this. So my man had to cut him for the builder, or for the carpenter. And he had to throw him up to him, right? So he'd cut him, he'd throw the first one up. What would happen?
Wrong measurements?
Wrong measurements. The man would go, that's fuck's sake, that's wrong size. Another one for me. Alright, sorry, what do you want it for? I want it for 14 foot and 2 inches. What's that in centimetres? He told that's what, and he tells me in centimetres. Right, your man pulls it out, right, he measures it, and he does now, to be fair, gets it to 14 foot and 2 inches. But the thing was, his measurement was out by a couple of mils, or a couple of centimetres here and there, depending on what tape he used. He cuts it again, a lovely brand new piece of wood. And when you cut those pieces of wood and you get them wrong, up again. And he puts it up and he roars, what that, Jesus Christ, he says, he gets down, he gets his measuring tape, puts it down and goes, this is what 14 foot, cuts it, marks it, cuts it, brings it up. Look, that's what it's like. Now I want 4 more of them, right? Can you see that? Get that tape of yours. So your man pulls out again. He cuts all 4 of them this time in the same length, because he thought to himself, now I'll get 4 of them done, bring them up. He brings the 4 of them up, and all 4 of them are wrong. Your man loses it. So your man, the gaffer now wasn't happy. And this went on all day. And the man could not, he went to the van, he got the other measuring tape, he went to the other measuring tape. And every time your man would come down and measure with his one, his was perfect. I could not understand why his tapes were acting like it. So that went on for the first day, and your man was paranoid with him in a thing. He said, this young apprentice now is shite, nowhere to damn. Next day, went in, and same crack again. And he lent him mud. And you know what happened?
What?
By lunchtime, he said, you tell you what you do now. You pack up your bag there now and your skills and you throw it into the back of that van of yours now. I said, get out of here and don't ever come back near me again. You man had to lose down a pile of wood and a day and a half of work with this fella, right? I said, I don't want to see you again, right? Do something else, do block lane. So your man was gone. And he came home. And you know, there was another man in the village building. He went to that man. Now still, he was, when he'd see the poor old cats in the evening, cats are coming around, you know, cats are coming around looking for something. He'd kick them and he'd go and get used. He was in bad form the first day. Second day he goes off to another builders, another carpenters. Because there was no end to work, loads of work, they were dying for carpenters. Same thing again. Didn't get to ask for the second day. And third day, said to me, the third time, look, you know, I'll get this job now. I know this fella will be handy enough number. Same thing again. No, he cut more wood arseways. Couldn't believe it. So my man said, So he came home and he could not understand how it was going, why it was going. And he sat down inside and none of his friends were around him now at this stage. And he couldn't understand why, what's going on, why can't I get to work? And the poor old cat came up and rubbed by his leg, big Tom did. Tom was a cute fella. And Tom came up and rubbed around her. He said, go away. Word that, he says. And Tom said, turned up, with the tail turned up, and he says, having a bad day, are you? The man looked. Having a bad day, says Tom. Did you just talk to me? He says, I did. I can talk, like you. What's so queer with that? Oh, but you're a cat. He says, I know I'm a cat. But I can still talk and you can talk. And you look like a monkey. I said, yeah, but. He says, you're having a bad day. I said, I am. What's none of your business? He says, how's the old wood cutting going with you? What do you mean? How are you getting on there cutting the old wood? You've been to 3 different jobs, I could see, the last few days. I have. What's going wrong with you? I said, jeez, everything I do is, I can't do it right. I'm getting the measurements wrong and all the wood is wrong and I can't keep the boys won't keep me. I'll never have a job. I'll have to emigrate or do something. And he went, so all right. He says, do you see my whiskers? He says, no. He said, yeah. I bet you can't see them. Do you know why? You think to himself, he knew damn well why. He says, well, he said, yeah, you and your friends the other night decided to cut him off for the crack and you threw me over Mrs. Johnson's wall. Saying to myself, get lost. That was the last word I heard from you, didn't you? I said, yeah. He said, well, tell you what. I says, I think you're in big trouble. I says, do you realise that you're never more than 5 metres away from a cat? What do you mean? He says, do you ever hear of, there's cats everywhere you live, there's cats all around you. I knew of a place once where a man was annoying the cats and the cats actually killed him and ate him and there wasn't a thing done to him. Will you go away or that? I'm only messing, says the cat. He says, but I tell you one thing though. So what's that? He says, I do a deal with you. I know why you're getting all your measurements wrong. How can you do that? Cat. He said, well, I'm not just an ordinary cat, I'm a talking cat. Don't forget that. So man thought for a penny. I said, jeez, and this fella is kind of like, I don't want to be taking this fella serious now because it's not every day you meet a cat that can talk, lads, is it?
Yeah.
So he says, right. And he says, I have special powers, says the cat. And the man kind of thought for himself, said, oh, he has special powers now. If he's able to talk, he's got special powers. And he says, you cut my whiskers, didn't you? I did. Would you do me a favour? If you ever cut my whiskers again, something bad, real bad's going to happen to you, right? So if you promise not to cut my whiskers again, I can promise to restore your mojo as a trainee carpenter. And I said, how do you do that? He said, well, you don't worry about that now. He says, you've got to start tomorrow morning now, and there's another man going to give you a go, right? And if you do me a favour, and if you promise to stick by it, and don't act the idiot, we'll fix your mojo, because I've got the special powers. Oh, but Jesus, I said, and the cat looked into the eyes, and the cat had them kind of glaring eyes, the ones he'd seen in those 1960s films. Ooh, and his ears started to get kind of go spiky. Ooh, like that. And the man looked, the cat's eyes were getting smaller and pupils were getting bigger and smaller in his eyes. And the man said, Jesus is serious, he says. And he says, okay, I'll do it. He says, right, so you go to work tomorrow morning, your mojo will be restored. You'll have your job and you'll train as an apprentice and you'll practice as an apprentice and you'll get qualified. But never ever touch your whiskers again or else. I promise, he says. Now there's one little payback for us. What's that, he says. He He says, there's a kind of a food that we like. Oh, yeah? Yeah, what is it? Sausages? No. Rashers? No. Chicken? No. It comes in a tin and it's called Whiskers. Cat food? Yeah, cat food, stupid. Cat food. So, every evening when you come up from work, we want a tin or two of cat food there in front of us. You got the deal? Here's the deal. Shake on it. Shake on it, he says. Put the paw out. And your man put the paw out. And he gave him a slap of the paw. And the 5 nails stuck in the man. And the cat pulled him closer, pulling in his hand. And he says, nails slipped in and the blood was coming from your man's hand. He says, you don't mess with me now, or else you don't know what's going to happen to you. And the cat licked his lips. And all of a sudden, about 500 cats peeped out over the ditches, looking with their big catty eyes. Your man knew he was in trouble. So your man went to bed. Cats went in. Brand new tape measurements. All fixed them all up. Bang. And your man went to work the next day. Oh, this is the freaking Aegis, it's the gaffer fella. Oh, this is the fella who couldn't give a job. I want 4 foot and 2 mils. He says, your man cut it down to see what was measuring this. Perfect. Everything your man asked for, your man cut it. Perfect. Jeez, I don't know what around the rest of these lads were giving out due for, he says. And he cut all day long. The best carpenter, trainee carpenter you could ever come across. And he carried on the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And every day he stopped off, and he went to the shop, and he bought the cats 2 tins of Whiskers, cat food. The dear stuff, not the cheap stuff, the fancy stuff. And he bought it for him. And him and the cats and all of them had a great relationship ever since. And poor old Tom, the cat, well, he lived on to his old age, and he's buried in the new graveyard in Ballygarrett. Tom the cat.